Sam Seder, welcome to Fast Politics.
Molly, thank you for having me.
Government's gonna shut down. Everything's going great.
I am of the opinion that the government has been more or less inoperative for months, short of its fascist wing that they have deployed to Chicago and LA and a city coming to you.
Tennessee,
Look, there's
right?
been a lot of
Memphis?
ICE activity in New York as well, in the Bronx, in Bed-Stuy, and we're just going to get more of that. But in the meantime, the other government functions, in fact, this week, there's 154,000 government employees who took the buyout, which is the highest number I think ever on record for a year. And they have not been working for months. We've been paying them. They've not
This
been working for months. I mean, so government shutdowns are bad. As a political matter, I think the American public is going to be aware of what is happening in a way that they haven't been aware until now. And part of that is a failure of political leadership from the Democrats too, in my estimation. Democratic leadership, I should say.
Yeah. Like, I spend a lot of time thinking about how different it was in 2016 than it is now. Like, how in 2016, there was a feeling that this is not who we are. And in 2024, there's a feeling this is exactly who we are, right? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think that feeling is also a function of like where you and I might sit in society. I mean, I had conversations, I remember explicitly, having conversations with Black people, brown people who are like not surprised at all. This is
yeah.
exactly who we are. But yes, I think that there was a much bigger surprise element. The other big factor, frankly, was the courts did not have 250 Trump appointees in 2016. And Russell Vogt had not had 4 years to figure out how to do this in a way that would be more expedient. And then I would say there was far greater unity now. The Republican Party, the last vestiges of what the Republican Party were killed off, so there was no pretending anymore, and they were emboldened because they were let back in. So all those things are different. It's a very different environment, I think. On the Democratic side, I think there is also a different environment because there is I think, at least amongst like people, not so much necessarily the political class, awareness of their political leaders failing to meet the moment. I
Yeah.
really do think that's out there. I mean, you see it in the polling. Democrats are a poll worse than Republicans, even
No.
though
They
and it's
poll slightly better, but still not well.
okay. I mean, maybe slightly better. I mean, I think these people are still going to vote for Democrats
Yeah.
largely,
Yeah.
but the dissatisfaction with Democrats, the difference between the dissatisfaction of
Mm.
Democrats in 2016 and Democrats now,
It's
it's more
humongous.
Democrats who
Yeah.
are dissatisfied with the Democratic Party, and that I think is much more pronounced.
I mean, there are a number of really bad things happening at once, but it does feel as if there's also a sort of Tea Party movement in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, but if you're saying that there is an insurgency and there's a grassroots, like, sort of dissatisfaction, I think that's absolutely true. I think it's necessarily different because of the way that the Democratic Party has viewed its base and populism versus the way that Republicans did. So it's gonna be a struggle. It played out in the Harris campaign, I think, too, and I think it's pretty clear who won that argument. And I think a lot of what we're seeing now is the tide is turning, and it's going to play out. It's going to get, like look to Maine if you want to see how this really plays out in my mind.
Graham Plattner,
And if Mills jumps
Janet
in,
Mills.
yeah, if
Yeah.
Mills jumps in and she will as Chuck Schumer and Christian Gillibrand's candidate, you're going to see it play out there.
Do
And I
you
think that's gonna be really an important, primary.
do you think she jumps in? Because my sense is that at 79, running for the Senate is kind of, I
I
mean,
think
she's said she doesn't want to.
has she? I
She has.
read as recently as a week ago that she was leaning towards it. Um,
Okay. So, I mean,
I
maybe she
mean,
does, but what I
and
had read the
well,
last
do I
time.
think she wants it? I imagine she probably wants to retire.
Yeah.
But I think she's also getting a lot of pressure from, like I say, the Senate Campaign Committee and Chuck Schumer. I absolutely think it's a huge mistake to run somebody who's going to be 79 when they enter into the governorship. But this is where I think that dynamic is playing out, where you have Schumer and Gillibrand pushing someone in a desperate attempt to, I think, I mean, I don't know I don't know how someone, a rational person, thinks this is a good idea, particularly in this environment, particularly when we lost the last election because we had a candidate who, originally was, too old and would not concede that notion, where we are waiting on releasing the Epstein files to seat a Democrat because we lost 3 Democrats to death in the past 9 months, where, we watched Dianne Feinstein, and by Dianne Feinstein, really, we have to say, like, her staff, essentially, keep her in office. All the things that we saw in terms of the Supreme Court and whatnot, I don't know if it would have made a difference. We had somebody who was sort of, aware of her surroundings at that time. But I mean, to not see the abject fallacy of perceiving a candidate to be strong at age 79 as they enter into the
Right.
office, I think is just
Right.
insane.
It's repeating a mistake the party has recently made. There are just a bunch of different sort of arguments for and against the shutdown, which by the time people listen to this will be either about to go into it or have just gone into it. There's an argument to be made. I mean, the Democratic base definitely wants a shutdown. And Jeffrey's camp has wanted a shutdown since March, right? I mean, they were for a shutdown in March.
Yes.
So there is an argument, and it was Schumer who caved in March because
Yes.
of the threats of, that it will mean more power for the Trump administration. So there's an argument to be made
Ostensibly, that was
ostensibly.
right.
Right.
That was what
But
the
again,
public argument was, yes.
right. But again, so there is an argument to be made that shutting down the government actually elevates the fight about healthcare. But again, it's a dangerous gamble because Trump is already saying that it's about healthcare for illegals. And what is true and not true in this post truth world doesn't necessarily matter if enough people believe it. So, do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? And where do you come down on
I
this?
think they should have done this in March. Donald Trump put out a video after Chuck Schumer had come out and said, I think the president has finally heard us, which it's very nice of Chuck Schumer to say that Donald Trump is a reasonable person and, is listening and
Right.
remind everybody how they were locked out of the White House and only were allowed in at Trump's behest. I mean, it's horrible, horrible politics. It's in
Right.
my estimation. But moments after, not moments, an hour after Chuck Schumer said that, Donald Trump posted an AI version of Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. Hakeem Jeffries was in a sombrero with a
Yes.
cartoonish
Mustache.
mustache. There was Mexican music playing, and Chuck Schumer was saying that
Mariachis.
yes,
To
and Chuck
not to put too fine a point on it. Yes,
right,
continue.
and Chuck Schumer was AI generated saying, "Everybody hates us, and, we want, illegals to come in the country, because they're gonna ultimately vote for us." My point being that we didn't need a government shutdown. We didn't need to give, Trump an excuse. He went and did that. That is
Right.
the new reality. To operate at this moment because you are afraid of how the Trump administration is going to lie about you, or the Republicans in the Senate House are going to lie about you, and to operate in such a way that, like, if we cower enough, then
Right.
maybe they won't notice we're here is absurd. The reason why
Right.
Chuck Schumer is doing this, the reason why Chuck Schumer would not want to shut down the government is because there is a belief in Democratic leadership that if we don't do anything, if we just ex- make people think that we don't exist, then the midterms will be exclusively a referendum on Trump, and that's what we need to win. And it could work. Certainly, like, in a secular cycle environment, it should work. There are headwinds insofar as, like, there's gonna be redistricting.
Yeah.
Um,
It didn't work in 2024.
it did not work in 2024, not at all. And if you're relying on people to be aware of what Donald Trump is doing and why it's bad, you nibble around the edges. Like, you make the issue, they're not extending Obamacare. Like, really? Is that really the sum total of like, is that even now, that may be part of it, but, like, the idea that the Democrats don't have to take a position on anything is a total fallacy. It is like, the vacuum that they leave allows the Republicans to run roughshod over them. And, it is astonishing to me that, like, okay, Donald Trump is completely lying about you. The JD Vance is out there, he's completely lying about what you're even holding out
Completely.
for. How do you
Right.
walk up to those microphones in that press conference? Right, like, just as a political matter, the only time that you are guaranteed to have the news cover what you say, broadly speaking, is
Right.
when you walk out of that meeting with the president. And so you get up there and you don't say, "Well, we're worried about extensions on Obamacare and rescission and pocket rescission." Nobody knows what that means. I mean, you and I know what that means, but we do this professionally. You get up there and you go, Donald Trump has been cutting services for people illegally. Donald Trump wants to raise your insurance rates. We want to stop that. And we're not going to sign on to this unless he agrees to it. Donald Trump is destroying farmers with tariffs. We want to stop that. You and I know that has nothing to do with the budget, but you could restore Congress's ability to shut down the tariffs. And you know what? They're lying. Wake up and smell the effing coffee. It is example after example after example of the failure of Democratic leadership to understand this moment. They may win by pretending they don't exist. I don't know where they go from there, frankly. It's probably, I mean, we saw what happens when you do that. I mean, that's what Kamala Harris ran on, like, no change. But I think that's leaving a lot up to chance, frankly. You need to have a message. And I cannot tell you what the Democratic message is because they have explicitly avoided having one. No, I mean,
No,
you can read Carvel, from, February. "Don't
right.
do anything," is what he
Right.
said, and they are
Right.
following that to a T.
So it was a really good piece in the New York Times opinion section yesterday about the idea that there's a class war coming to the Democratic Party. That I'm not sure. Did you read that piece?
I haven't read that piece, but that would not surprise me.
The story about how you either run as populist or you basically give up. I mean, that's essentially what that there's a populist lane and it's available, and
100%.
almost nothing else is available, really.
I mean, what else? You tell me. Like,
Well,
even as a like, Kamala Harris ran as, "I am Republican friendly," at least, Cheney
yeah,
style republicanism, which,
that didn't work.
that did not work. No.
There are not a lot of white women who love Liz Cheney who have decided they're gonna vote for Democrat.
It's even worse than that. What they did is they basically said, "Donald Trump is not part of the establishment."
Right,
Because we have the establishment right here. We are the
right.
Republicans and the Democrats. He's
Yeah,
somewhere else. He's like a third party. And,
and that made him a little more appealing.
Americans were like, "That's great." I
Yeah,
mean, Donald Trump was running on as a change candidate and as an outsider, and Kamala Harris went around the country and said, "He's an outsider, and
yeah,
he's gonna bring
yeah,
change," and we're not.
yeah.
But I mean, what is the other option? I mean, first of all, aside from the fact that we desperately need that, because if you look at, like, all the economic indicators, and this is why I think the Biden administration got caught up. The economic indicators on, like, top line paper, I think things are going to start to look worse soon. But the reason why they're maintaining is because we have such incredible wealth inequality in this country that literally 20% of the people are scaffolding all of these economic numbers. And it does not tell us the story. These economic indicators do not tell us the story that they
Of
used to tell
most of the
us
country.
30
Yeah.
years ago or 40 years ago, because we have such incredible wealth inequality now that a concentrated group of people can support what looks like good economic indications while 80% of the population suffers. You need to address this. We need an economic populism without a doubt. What fascinates me about the only thing that's attempted to rival it is this sort of like amorphous abundance agenda, which is, backed by open AI people. They
All
dumped
right.
100.
Wait. I want you to do this because Jesse is obsessed with this. I think it needs a little more of an explainer. So there's a lane in the Democratic Party that's populism, and that's Mondani, that's AOC, that's Bernie, that's people who actually break through. And then there's this
And
other sort
Murphy,
of
we
more
should say, like, Murphy's trying
Murphy.
to get
Yes,
into this.
yes. Murphy has done a good job.
I think like even Van Hollen is starting to get
Mm,
there. I mean, look, that's where it's going. It's so
right.
like it has to.
In our house, we don't say Van who, we say Van Hollen.
Right, right.
But I want you to talk about this sort of highly astroturf abundance agenda.
There was a real concern that and I had my problems with the Biden administration, particularly in the context of Gaza
Right.
and Israel. As it turns out, probably the majority of the country did too. But be
Yes.
that as it may, the Biden administration was full of people who were pro labor
Yeah.
and full of people who were anti concentrations of wealth that
Right.
manifested itself in the, antitrust and whatnot.
That's
And
like Lena Khan.
Lena Khan, Jonathan Cantor at the DOJ, others. It's sort of like Warrenites and Sanderites in many respects in those two areas. There was Kamala Harris represented an opportunity for people who don't like those agendas to, whose business is a function of weakening labor standards or concentration of wealth, i.e., big tech,
Mhm.
largely gig economy. Her brother-in-law famously
Worked
was a
for
counsel
Uber,
for Uber.
Tony.
She had I can't remember her name now. A woman who worked with her on her debate prep was literally representing Google in the antitrust
Right,
suit that
right,
the
right.
US government was bringing. So
A
you get a
lot of
sense of like,
corporations are
Ye
people too.
corporations are people too. Mark Cuban's coming in as a
Right.
spokesperson saying, "We're gonna get rid of this antitrust stuff," but they had no sort of like movement behind it. And simultaneously, Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson were compiling essays that they'd written over the years, some of which Ezra Klein's were largely about local housing regulations to build more housing. Derek's were he had a big piece about why grants weren't given to scientists and they needed to stitch it together. And if you've read the book, which I have, the idea that the anti tax movement that that inhibited government research can be tied together with local housing projects or environmental policies that inhibited growth, supposedly, is a big stretch. But they needed to do it for the book. And I think they thought, like, okay, this is going to be sort of like, biting around the margins of a second Biden term. But Harris came in, it gave an opportunity for these people to come in and maybe get a hold of this administration. The tech people wanted to promote the book. They put $120 million behind an abundance thing. You can Google it. They decided to do it. I think it was like, I don't know, a couple months ago. It was like under the abundance rubric. And I think it became an attempt to create a counter movement, but there's no constituency for this movement.
Right.
And the idea that like we need to get rid of housing regulations for public housing that is too precious about asthma, filters when a housing is built near a highway
Right.
prevent asthma. I mean, I'm sure there are housing regulations in San Francisco that could use reform. But to make this a broad movement, that's been the only sort of pushback, and it's unclear. And Ezra just, I think, got sort of taken apart a little bit by Ta-Nehisi Coates this week about saying that we should have candidates that are anti-abortion which is also
Right.
sort of like a retread. Like you can start with progressive populism, some type of economic populism, and then within the context of like more red, conservatively socially states, you can allow for some latitude for these
Right.
people. But there needs to be a fundamental, why does the Democratic Party exist? The only space for them to do that, it seems to me, is to follow like an FDR, Four Freedoms type of variant, which is,
Yeah.
people should have the freedom to live their lives without fear of a health crisis bankrupting them, people should be able to support themselves with a high, a quality job, and
Yeah.
not feel like captured by their employers. And We should not have huge amounts of concentrated wealth, which breeds concentrated power. We've seen this. Like, we just saw 4 people basically finance Donald Trump's, campaign. So, I don't know what the alternative is to an economic populism, but it is really, things are not gonna go back to the way they were. Donald Trump has already eviscerated huge swaths of, our government functions.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a fundamental change in our politics, both as a political matter to get elected, in my opinion, and as a policy matter slash political matter to get reelected. There's going to have to be real delivering of an economic justice, essentially, where the other 80% of the country gets to participate in what the 20% is participating in now.
Sam Cedar, thank you.
Thank you, Molly.